Cachamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
I'm Daryl W4 with the Bad Cop for the 68th edition of the GeoGearHeads, and glad to have you here with us as we discuss the gear used by our audience members. This show is all about the hardware from our audience members, and were it not for your input, we wouldn't be able to put this show together. Before we get into the topic, let's give the GeoGearHeads schedule for the next 4 shows.
Certainly. We have some exciting shows coming up over the next 4 weeks. Next week, we're talking with 14 Hash about his unique and clever hides. Then, on April 25th, we're talking with a Geosphere 3 developer about tips and tricks for making the most out of the latest version of that iOS caching app. And Daryl, I don't know about you, but I'm really excited about what they've done with this latest update.
Yeah, I am as well. And, you know, sometimes I have tripped around in the app as well as when I'm talking.
Well, that's true. I trip around because I'm looking at the app instead of where I'm going.
Well, that's not a very good plan during a show.
Well, let's talk about the tips and trips then. Okay, after that, we're really excited to be talking with fellow cacher Clay Jar about scuba caching on May 9th. And the final episode we'll give you as a heads up about is we'll focus on geocaching streaks. That's on May 16th. So you only have a couple of weeks from this recording to get your comments and questions to us for the Geosphere episode, and nearly a month for streaking. Wait, that could get us into trouble. Maybe I should say we need your input and feedback on long, continuous days of geocaching finds.
Yeah, maybe, but it doesn't sound as interesting.
Yes, but it is really perfectly legal.
Yeah, this is true. We are really looking forward to all of that input. It shapes the shows and gives you the opportunity to tailor the show. We love hearing that feedback in your own voice, and the easiest method is to call our voicemail line at 206-350-3647. For the best quality, though, you can record an audio file with your computer, smartphone, tablet, or whatever, then email it to us at geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com. You can also send us feedback as text to that email address or through CacheFace, Google+, Facebook, or Twitter. So many ways to get in touch with us that we can field your comments and questions for the show or any of our previous shows. So just get in touch with us and we'll get you on the show.
Certainly. Now, all these shows are recorded live on Thursday nights here in North America, and you can watch them live. If you're on Google+, simply circle the GeoGearHeads, and then watch the stream for that Hangout on Air to appear. That usually happens about 6:10 p.m. Pacific or 9:10 p.m. Eastern. If you're on Facebook or Twitter, watch for the link to be posted, and then follow the stream on YouTube. For those of you on Google+, we also post events for upcoming shows, so you can add them to your calendar as a reminder to watch the shows or to give you a chance to get that feedback to us in time for your favorite topic.
Yeah, it is a great reminder, and I use it just as kind of the show schedule, and it helps me keep track of what we're going to be doing. Yes. But on the subject of feedback, I did hear from Groundspeak on their policy for virtual discoveries of trackables, but we haven't had a chance to really mention it on the show yet. We turned it into a major discussion topic for the April Cacher Coffee Show on Geocaching Podcast, which I'll link to in the show notes as well. But to summarize for this show, Groundspeak does not allow discoveries without seeing the physical trackable. They do not have a written policy to reference, but will work with the owners to remove the virtual logs. Hopefully that will change and we'll see something, from one way or the other to allow or disallow those virtual logs. But for now, it is against the rules for Groundspeak geocaching.com trackables. That means it's also against the rules for our GeoGearHeads 2013 Traveler Race. So please make sure your travelers aren't encouraging these virtual discoveries.
And that simply means putting it up on Facebook, Google+, allowing people to get that tracking number and log that discovery.
Yeah, and including the tracking info in the picture is one of the most frequent and easily missed ways of doing that.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. Now I'm going to have to... No, I won't do it. As for the race itself, we're up to a total of 35 travelers from 21 cachers. That leaves you lots of room to get your traveler activated and entered into the race. You can visit the show notes for this episode and for the link to the information about how to do that, and not only have a chance to share a tip with your fellow geocachers, but also a chance to get at some great prizes donated to us by GX Proxy and your favorite, and may I say on your part, Daryl, award-winning podcast hosts, us. Now, I released mine about a week ago, but there haven't been any hits on it yet, so you certainly still have a chance of beating me.
Yeah, it doesn't take much if you don't have any points at all.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, I'm really excited that today I just found out one of my coins was dropped in a cache just outside of Walt Disney World. So that's actually going to be pretty close to Geo Woodstock this year, and I'm kind of hoping that someone picks it up and brings it to the event and gets lots of discoveries at Geo Woodstock.
If not, you're going to have to go there and do it yourself.
You know, I was really hoping to be able to do it, but just couldn't pull it off this year.
I know. I was in the same boat hoping to do it. Now, for me, that's clear across the country. You can't get farther away. Well, the Keys. But really, I mean, that's the entire distance across the country for me.
Yeah, you're pretty much, top left corner to bottom right corner.
Bingo. It was really nice when they had it here. I think they should have it again in Washington State. I'm just saying.
Yeah, my guess is you'll probably see it again there. But yeah, we don't have any inside information, and yeah, I'd still like to see it out here again. Where actually, I don't think we've had it out here ever. No, we haven't had it out here.
You've had it close in Indiana, Kentucky. Nothing in Ohio, New York, Pennsylvania wasn't too far for you.
No, Pennsylvania wasn't too bad, but in any case, why don't we get on to the gear that our listeners have actually told us that they're using, and one of our good listeners who's written us many times was kind enough to join us on the show. So let's welcome the Wooden Radio.
Good evening. Am I on?
You are on.
You are so on.
I got the right switch switched. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. One of the things that I found interesting from your original email was that you're not using an operating system that we see very often within the caching community. So why don't we just kick it off by having you tell us what it is that you're doing?
Well, I'm using Linux, so I have a few scripts written in a bunch of different things, Perl and Shell, that will feed GPS Babel to load my 60 CSX. I also use the iPhone and iPod with Geosphere, and there's a new version out today.
Yes, I saw that, 3.0.1. Minor bug fixes.
I actually got that last night, and they did actually make a couple of other changes to it, but I'm very excited to see that because now I don't have it airing out when I try to download my primary Pocket Query.
Oh, you guys are just so picky.
Yeah, I could make it work when I downloaded it as the GPX file. And that's one of the tricks that I'm sure we'll be talking about with the developer. And the new version allows you to switch between the live download or the GPX download. Mm-hmm. But it was really interesting that the live API downloads of your Pocket Queries are actually grabbing the current version of that cache information, not the version that's included in the GPX file. It's actually going and rerunning the information that it's pulling. It's not rerunning the query itself. It's just rerunning the information. So I found that really interesting. Yeah.
What you would get on the Pocket Query page if you, I forget which button it is, but when you go to see the query itself.
Well, actually, it's not quite that simple. It's pulling information on the caches live, but it's not refreshing the caches. So if you were to go to the Pocket Query page, you can download the GPX file that was already generated, which gives you the old information, the same one that would be normally emailed to you, or if it's too big, just sits there for you to download. But if you do the preview from the Pocket Query, it's actually rerunning the query. So this is something kind of in between.
That's the one I meant, that preview.
Yeah, so it's in between because it's not actually rerunning the query, it's just taking that index of caches and creating the new information for it. So that's something that's really handy. It's a lot slower than just downloading the GPX file. So my workaround to make GeoSense work for, or sorry, Geosphere work for me, wrong app on wrong platform, was to actually go and download the GPX file from the website rather than downloading it through the live API. But now it's fixed, so I don't have to worry about it anyway.
Well, I download all the GPXs, or the Pocket Queries, and put them into a Dropbox so I have them all handy, and I can load the 60 CSX from any of them anytime I want. And what I do in Maryland, there's about 7,000 caches in the whole state. So I have Pocket Queries set up to cover the entire state. So I have a database of all of them in the in Geosphere on both the iPhone and the iPad. But I usually cache with the CSX, carry the iPhone just in case I need the extra hint. And let me get what we do around here. What I do anyway is within 25 miles of home, I have 3,100 caches. We have a lot of caches in Maryland, in the Baltimore, Washington area, but it's rather dense and population is dense. None of the parks are open at night, so there's very little night caching. And in the community I live in, there's some open space. You don't have to walk more than a mile to get to a cache from just about any cache in the suburban area. When I call it, we have more suburban caching. We have a lot of urban caching, but some suburban and even far out. A mile walk to get to a cache. There's not too many I know of that you got to make an all-day trek. So as far as equipment, a hiking stick from REI with a tripod head on the top in case I want to use the camera, a pen if I remember it, and
we've all been there.
The logs with wet sticks and mud, stuff like that. And then one thing that I don't know what I've emailed to you guys and you've mentioned or not, I carry one of the grocery store t-shirt bags. And sometimes I start off with throwing my lunch wrappers in it so it looks like I've got Saito in it. And by the time I'm finished even a mile hike in an urban area on a clean street, it was bursting at the seams. You can always find something to pick up. Mm-hmm. And I feel you could go up to the picnic table outside of a Starbucks, get down on the ground, look for a cache. As long as you're picking up stuff in that bag, nobody's going to ever stop you.
That was the tip you sent us, and we read it here on this podcast. I thought it was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I do that just about every cache because you can always find something to put in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is a time of year, too, in the States with snow, where you're starting to see all of that trash that was hidden moved around. So you go out now and you're going to find lots of stuff to pick up and move out.
So that's about all I need for caching. Can't cache at night, so I don't need a flashlight. I have one of these little diamond-shaped lights, single LEDs on my keychain, so I do have a light to look in some crevices. It's not really bright, so in a bright sunlight it doesn't help a lot. But that's about what we need, or what I need around here anyway.
Now, you said that you use the iPhone and the iPad. Do you take
Yes.
the iPad out in the field with you?
Very seldom. I leave that in the car
Okay.
and have a data connection on it. So if I want to read I'll read up on the cache if I need to in the car, and if I really need to, I can go back to the iPhone and refresh my mind on what that hint was.
Now, since you use GeoSphere, I assume you use it on the iPad as well, right? You mentioned
Yes.
that. Do you use that to navigate between caches? Tell GeoSphere to go use a navigation program to guide me?
I've never done that.
Okay.
I have thought of it.
The notable considerations too when you're using an iPad, for anyone who might not know, the iPad only has a GPS in the wireless versions. The Wi-Fi only versions do not have a GPS. They will get a location off of whatever the closest Wi-Fi access points are. But that's as good as it's going to get for its location information, which when you're out in the woods doesn't do you any good at all.
It'll grab it off the iPhone.
Yeah, if you're tethered to an iPhone, it will actually transfer the location from the iPhone, which is a very nice feature.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't know if I knew that.
Yes. No, that is a very cool feature of iOS, is that in tether mode, it will actually transfer the location to other iOS devices. So if you had an iPad with LTE, for instance, like I do, it will actually transfer the location information to your iPod Touch, for instance, that you're tethering to.
Nice. I hadn't considered that. Now, I also have iPad with LTE, and I use it in the car because that's a nice big, 9.7-inch screen for a GPS. And use our favorite program we've talked about I don't know how many times, Navigon.
Yeah, and it's a really great way, the iPad being a really great way to figure out those more impromptu trips of which cache am I going to go to next, because it's a nice big planning interface for figuring out, which caches, especially when you're looking for a cluster, which caches might be the best, easiest ones to go to next.
Right. And the downside is GeoSphere is not a native iPad app. It's still an iPhone app.
Not yet, at least. But
Not
one
yet.
of the cool features in the new 301 app, and I haven't had a chance to look it up yet, is that you can actually export the field node templates, which is one of the other great things about GeoSphere that I use all the time, is those field node templates, which allow you to do essentially like merge fields in there as well, so that you can say, okay, this is my 4th cache find of the day.
Date, time, cache find.
Time, yeah. So that's a great tool, and with the current version, you can actually export those. And I haven't had a chance to try it yet because I've been so busy with work, but I wanted to try importing that into the iPad, because that will make it really, really handy to be able to do it from either device and just export my field notes from one to the other. And whenever I go, or templates I should say, whenever I go to an event, I always set up the field note template, or I should say whenever I go to an event where we're going to be caching, I always set up a template ahead of time that includes things like the link and the URL to that event, so I can say I was caching around the event, link to that event today. So it really speeds up my logging and gives it a little bit more than if you just do a TFTC or basic templated, hey, I found this with my iPhone, that kind of stuff.
Is there a TFTC template? Because that would save so much time.
I'm pretty sure there is, actually.
Yeah, okay.
So someone is bound to have created one.
I'm trying to be ironic, but it's not working here because it actually may be true.
Yes. Well, hey, you can make a template that has TFTC in multiple colors and styles.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. You can have a rainbow TFTC.
On the iPad,
joke, but it's going to happen.
on iOS, you can set up keyboard shortcuts and type TF, and it'll fill it in for you. It's an autocomplete.
I have a keyboard shortcut TBC, so it fills out the bad cop for me. Because, that's so long to type.
Yeah, that is one of the great things with so many of the smartphones, not, and tablets as well. iPhone, you're limited to just the one from Apple, and it does do that automatically now. But so many of the other keyboard substitutes on Android will do that as well, and many of the ones that are included with the device will let you set up your basic templates. I was out today with so-and-so, so you could just create, O and then their name, and it would say out with, So if you're looking to do some shortcuts like that for your logging, that would be a really great way to do it. But one of the things we hadn't talked about, Wooden Radio, is how you're actually logging your caches. Are you using GeoSphere, or are you doing something when you get back home using the CSX?
If I have the iPad with me and I take the time, I'll log it through GeoSphere. I don't like the small keyboard, but I will mark it as found, so that when I get back I can look and see how many founds I have. And of course the 60 CSX has the calendar with the list of what you found during the day. So it's a mix. Sometimes I come back and I can write I could write the Great American Novel on the computer, but I'm not going to do it on the iPad, and definitely not on the iPhone.
Of course. Well, it's even worse if you're trying to use the soft keyboard on the CSX, and it doesn't have much to put in there. I did use the CSX as my primary caching device for a long time, and I used that calendar, and I had to go in and make my notes by changing the descriptions, which just was quite the mess, as you can probably imagine.
Well, I have a couple scripts for when I'm loading the cache. I strip off the GC so I can have a longer cache name. I put in the two numbers,
terrain and difficulty.
1 through 9 for the difficulty, and the 4 fields of find. And then for the description, I put in as much of the name as I can. So I have a fair a paperless on the 60 CSX. Minimal paper. Put it as minimal paper.
There you go. The beauty of GPS babble.
Yeah, and that's one of the nice things about having the GeoSphere with you is you can go pretty much without descriptions for most caches, but when you do need it, you can just pull it up right there. Even if it's a cache that you didn't have loaded with any smartphone, you can just go and look up the GC number by doing, in your web browser, coord.info/GC number, and it will take you right to that cache page. So, great thing to remember for anyone, but it is a great tool to have just because if you're running with most of those GPSRs, it doesn't put the full cache description in.
Exactly. And that also works with travel bugs.
Absolutely, which don't fit into any GPS for the most part.
Yeah, coord.info/traveler, TB traveler bug, travel bug.
Yeah, /T/travel number.
Correct.
Thank you. You're right.
Yeah, which we talked about for the QR code logging. That's something that you would want to do. I think we should probably get to some feedback that we got from Facebook, but I'm going to give you a little heads up, Wooden Radio. I think I want to talk about, after we get through this Facebook feedback, what you might do to change your caching if you were given the option. But first, Bad Cop, why don't you read us that feedback from Facebook?
Certainly. We got feedback from Minnesota Boy. And he wrote, over the time I've been caching, I've been using both my GPSR, which is a Magellan Explorus GC, and my iPhone. I found the combination of the two gives me the best of both worlds. I get very good accuracy from the GPSR and great info and maps from the iPhone. Of course, the live logging on the iPhone is nice too. Depending on the circumstances, I may rely more on one than the other. And I think that marries very well with what the Wooden Radio was saying.
Oh, absolutely. And I have to admit that I really don't take my GPSR out much anymore. And when I do, I tend to just leave it dangling around my neck in favor of the iPhone. It's become one of those, I know roughly where I'm going. And a lot of the time when I'm out on some of the longer hikes, there's other people with us as well. But I found that I just really don't use the GPSR, even though I have it with me, because I've gotten used to the iPhone. It's quick, it's easy, and I don't have to do as much prep work.
Right. Well, the Explorers GC is a really nice GPS for, when I don't want to say paperless, but reduced paper caching.
Yeah, it is the best paperless in the Explorers, the new Explorer series, is probably the best paperless that I have seen. You know, I like that better than anyone else. I still have problems with their soft keyboard, but overall, I haven't seen anyone do it quite as well, and they do a better job loading through their app than most of the other methods of getting the cache information in, and it does do the photos. Of course, you can just do the drag and drop GPX files, which is what I end up doing most of the time because it's so much faster.
Exactly.
So why don't we get back to you, Wooden Radio, and if you had something to change in your gear or workflow, what would that be?
I can't think of a thing, really. I'm so used to what I've got. It took me a long time to get used to the new look and feel on Geosphere. I really don't like the layout. I like the old one because I'm used to it.
Yeah, it is going to take some getting used to it. But what about the GPSR? Would you want to go for maybe a touch screen, or you really like the buttons better?
I'm afraid of the touch screen getting damaged somehow, scratched up. If I put it in my pocket and I've got keys, or drop it on the ground, I've got a big scratch across the front of my GPSR right now. I know it's hard glass, but it's got a scratch in it.
Yeah.
The touch screen, you're out in the woods and getting wet in the rain. I'm not sure a touch screen, I would like a touch screen out there.
Well, I have the Oregon 200. So it's an older model. I've had it for several years. When I first got it, the first thing I did is put an invisible shield screen protector on it. It had no impact to the usability of the device, and I've never had a scratch on that screen. I've dropped it. I've had to dig out mud and pine needles from around the edge of the screen, but never had a scratch on it. The case is all scratched up, but the screen is still in perfect shape. So I would say the newer touchscreens you've got no issue with.
Well, I will say that the older Oregons, not the newer models that just were announced, and I don't think are actually shipping yet, those were the pressure-sensitive touch screens, and those I have had problems with because it is a softer, more malleable material. But I too throw the screen protector on there, and I like the anti-glare screen protectors. Yeah, so I'll take an anti-glare from another device, cut it down, and throw it on the GPSR. And I've not had a problem ever since. But with the bare Oregon, we have actually scratched that touch screen. The screens that they're using are a little susceptible. The newer touch screens, however, don't have the same problems that the older ones did. And now that they've gone to that new capacitive touchscreen on the Oregon 600s and 650s, I'm really looking forward to that because that should be very, very durable. And I think that you're seeing evidence of that in the design of the case for it, in that there's not that ridge to catch all that mud and dirt and pine needles.
I have to say it was hard to go from the Oregon to the iPhone and back again, as there are two different types of touchscreen. I'd go to the Oregon and try to touch it like I was using the iPhone, and I was like, oh no, wait, I have to press. It's a much more concerted effort to press and move than just to flip.
You try doing the pinch and zoom and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the reasons I think I prefer using one with buttons, is because they're very different tactile interfaces. So it makes that switch from the smartphone to the GPSR a little bit less mentally challenging. And yes, I just said that I'm mentally challenged.
Yes, well, you've been cashing with me.
I take my 60 CSX in a kayak, and it does get splashed. Although I try to keep it in a Ziploc baggie right now. I splashed it once, just splashed it, and it quit. I had to
Really?
dry it out. Yeah, put it in a big box. I got it. The,
Yes.
the cat litter, and I put it in there for about a week. It came back to life for a while, and I had to send it back to Garmin to be replaced.
No, that's too bad. But yeah, if the seals on those GPSRs go bad,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what the weatherproof rating is, if the seal is broken, it's going to fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never had my Oregon underwater, but I've had it dripping wet, and it's not been an issue for me.
At the same time, I'm kind of ashamed to mention that I do actually take my iPhone out and use it in the rain. I've gotten so complacent about that for just like the standard, hey, I've got to see what podcast is playing right now. I just don't really care. I kind of shield it a little bit with my body, and I've had iPhones for 3-4 years now, and I've never had one fail.
I'm wagging my finger at you. No. Okay.
I know. But that's why I'm saying I admit I do it. When I go out caching, though, I put it in the dry bag. So for I'll let the thing get wet, but when I go out caching, I put it in a dry bag, even if it looks like there might be a remote possibility of rain. So it's one of those psychological things where I pay attention and I go prepared for caching. I'm not so prepared when I'm going to work.
Now, I did see a torture test of the iPhone 5 when it first came out. Drop test, heat test. They dunked it underwater for 30 seconds, pulled it out. It didn't have any adverse effects. So perhaps the iPhone 5 is a little better sealed than we've seen in the previous phones.
Well, that's good to know, because I've been a little bit more cautious with the iPhone 5 than I was with my 4.
Be that as it may, my iPhone 3GS didn't take getting wet.
No. I will say that the 4 made me a lot more comfortable than the 3GS did. I wasn't terribly fond of that case, especially because I was able to crack the back a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, I think probably the biggest thing that would change my workflow, as I mentioned, I don't really use the GPSR all that much, in part because of the effort required to prep that. It's just so much easier to grab the phone. I've got it with me all the time anyway, and go with that. I have that remote data connection. I can just load up the GPX files and go. If I could do that from the phone to my GPSR, I think I would actually start using my GPSR again. And to that end, there's a new product from a company up in Canada that they're calling Rove. And we mentioned last week the Kickstarter project for the T-Pods. They're going through kind of a competing site called Indiegogo for this one. And essentially, it's a $99 thumb drive sized device that plugs into the back of your Garmin GPSR to allow a Bluetooth connection to load and offload information from the unit. So that kind of got me interested, but at $99, I'm not sure I'd spend the money, and it does kind of stick off the port, and seems like
it uses a mini USB port, and it doesn't specify Garmin only. It may work with other the GPSRs with the mini USB port. So Rove, ROVE, no relation to Carl,
no,
is a really interesting idea. So the idea is you can take GPX files from your smartphone and send them to your GPS.
Or vice versa. You can grab a track or something like that and drop it onto a website through the app that it's going to come with. I think for iOS only initially, but they are working on support for Android. And we'll link to it in the show notes. But at $99, I'm not sure that I'd want to spend that over, just replacing my GPSR for one of those new Oregon 600 or 650s that we mentioned, which will have that Bluetooth connectivity built in. However, we don't know exactly what they're going to let you transfer through their app and through their protocols. So that's still kind of up in the air, and it might be that the Oregon doesn't let you load a whole GPX file from your Pocket Query, but that Rove would, in which case it makes it a little less attractive for me to get one of those new Oregon 600 models.
Well, and the Oregon 600 starts at what, $400?
Right,
So,
right.
if you've got a 60 CSX that's still working good, I'm thinking of you, Wooden Radio, you could take this, plug it in, and update your caches on the run. If you're doing a cross-country trip, this is a great idea.
But
Yeah,
the 60 CSX takes the binary file, the Garmin format, not the text format. That's only on the newer ones.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say
So the Oregon, or Colorado and Oregon and Montana?
Colorado, Oregon, Dakota, Montana.
So the state series.
Correct. And the new eTrex line, the new GPS maps, the 62, the 78 series, those are all supposed to be supported. But yeah, again, it's kind of one of those deals. Do I want to spend the extra $100 to upgrade a unit that I might have that's out of warranty? Or do I just want to go and spend the money toward replacing a unit that might be out of warranty and getting a little beat? So, yeah, it does seem like a good, viable option.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen it, of course, yet, and we haven't tried one out. I just don't know how much appeal there's going to be at $100 to upgrade an existing unit.
Well, let me read from the Rove website. It says, Rove connects to your geocaching.com account and instantly sends multiple local geocaches to your GPS. Rove pulls the closest 25 geocaches to your current location within a radius of 50 kilometers. So that is really kind of nice. Of course, using the link of your smartphone to do that.
Right. And it is doing it over Bluetooth, which I imagine is why they're at least currently only going to do the closest 25, because it might be a little bit cumbersome to download that whole pocket query.
Right.
And that's really what we've got to see is what are the capabilities of the Rove versus the Oregon 600 and 650. Does one do more than the other? And that's, I think, going to factor into the purchase decisions on those. But I have to admit that $100 just seems a little steep for me to go out and get this device. At that price, I'm probably not going to bother with one. But the nice thing is it does allow you to move it from device to device. So if you had one for the kids, one for yourself, or multiples, just for whatever, it would be a way to get caches loaded instantly. It's especially appealing, no matter which of these you're looking at, for those first-to-find hunters, because that's when you really want that quick access, and when having the GPS really helps you a lot, because if the coordinates are off, you can get good coordinates to send to the cache owner.
What would be a huge selling point for the Rove is if it could read a micro USB card. So you go to an event, you stick a micro USB card in the Rove and download those caches to GPSs. Does that make sense? With that way, you'd get the computer out of the equation.
Yeah. No, I understand, but I'm not sure that would necessarily help all that much. But yeah, it's an interesting concept, and we've seen a lot of people at the events around here where they just pass off the micro SD card from their GPSR.
I said micro USB, didn't I? Sorry, micro SD.
Yeah, well, we knew it.
Wow, sorry, I got a little confused there in my head. You don't
too
want
many micros being crossed at the same
exactly.
time. Whatever you do not cross the micro streams.
There you go. That's too late. They just happened in my head.
Well, before we wrap the show up, Wooden Radio, what are your thoughts on that connectivity between the smartphone and a GPSR?
I think it would be nice. I would like to see it actually load a GPX file that maybe you've already downloaded with Geosphere or GeoCaching.com app. When I need to load, I'm not looking for one really close sometimes. When I went down to Florida, I had some pocket queries set up. I wanted to load up what I had so I could then go off to the next cross past Disneyland and pass your travel bug there. You know, but I had them all loaded up in the iPad, and was wishing, I wish I brought my notebook with me so I could then load them into the 60. But I just looked to see what was close, and then actually I think at that time I used the iPhone. There are times when the iPhone is close enough.
Oh yeah, and especially when you're traveling, it does make it nice to not have all that extra gear. And so many cachers that I've seen posts from recently are looking for a way to use their smartphone or their tablet and eliminate a computer. And more people that I've talked to in general, not just in geocaching, really are looking for a way to eliminate a computer from their home and go just to tablets and smartphones, because they're not using most of the features anymore, and it's just so much more convenient for them to have the tablet or smartphone. Maybe they'll go get a keyboard for doing emailing, but they're anxious to get rid of the computers and go nothing but tablets and smartphones.
There are certain use cases I can see of that. I'm not ready to get rid of a computer yet, though.
Oh no! Well, for us, we certainly can't get rid of our computers. But for people who are basically just doing the email, the Facebook, the social network kind of stuff, doing some web browsing, those folks certainly can get away from using a computer. And a lot of geocachers, that's all they're doing at home is those basic functions.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also loading the GPSR, and that's why I think we're going to start seeing more of the GPS manufacturers coming out with a way to talk with their units, because if they don't, I think they're starting to see that their market is going to start dwindling out of necessity, because people don't want as many computers in the home as they had previously.
If Apple would let us write to an SD card from an iPad or an iPhone or even an iPod, all this could be eliminated.
Yeah, I think you'd still have to have
most of it.
Yeah, you'd still have to have the apps from the manufacturers. And the thing has always been you can create the hardware to make that work. And now with most of the Android devices, you could create an OTG device to make that work.
Mm-hmm.
But in most of the Android devices, I've discovered that they're actually locking out some of that functionality to protect their users. So that was really disappointing when I found out that even though I can get this OTG and I can do stuff, I'd have to root the device in order to be able to write to my GPSR.
Right. So, I mean, there are options, but, I mean, if you jailbreak an iDevice, you can write to the SD card.
Oh, yeah.
There are options, but right out of the box, neither one really works right now.
Well, and these are the type of options right now that you have to be a little bit geekier, and though I suppose most of our audience members could do it, probably wouldn't even want to, and at that point it's just worth running around with a laptop again if you really care that much, or just ignore it and just use your smartphone and nothing else.
Well, some of these thin new Windows 8s, what do we want to call them? They're convertible. They're a tablet and a PC. That would solve a lot of the issues.
Indeed, and I don't doubt that we're going to see a lot more of those picked up by the cachers, but they still have to work on some of the battery life concerns from what I've heard to make them appealing to the people who are looking for that tablet.
Well, that's true. But you got to remember, it's a PC with the option to be a tablet. So
right. Well, it's a laptop, not a tablet.
Exactly.
So it's something in between. Don't expect it to be everything you want. It's going to have to make some compromises, and it's like anything else. It's just a new device.
Right.
So with that, I think we're going to wrap up this episode. And before we go, one last reminder on the shows for the next 4 weeks. April 25th, we'll have 13 Hish for his show, episode 69. May 2nd, we'll have let's see, that's going to be 60 or 70. Sorry, 70 with Geosphere 3 tips and tricks. Scuba caching is on May 9th, followed by streaking on the
Daryl,
16th.
nobody wants to see us streak. I think you mean a streak of geocache finds. At least I hope you do.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Check the Cacheamaniacs website at cacheamaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all our episodes. We love hearing from you, our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads at cacheamaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cacheamaniac shows coming. Please consider making a PayPal donation through the link on our website to support the Cacheamaniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. This show is copyright 2013 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cash, Willie, Cacheamaniac.